Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark. Be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Are you able to see your comments at StreamYard, Charles?
Just have to click over to it.
Okay, then you can see what people are saying. So if somebody asks you a question, you'll be able to answer them.
Yes.
Okay. I want to say hello to Chris Miller. Hello there, buddy. Hello there, Cash. Eric Kiss, and that's really you, Charles Rogers. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for coming in here. A lot of people love hearing, having you here, and they had trouble when we did this video before because we had to use the phone.
Yes.
So now we're redoing it basically because of that. And I asked you before we started, which one do you want to start going over first, Blair Adams or Terry Nichols? So we're going to go and let you start off however you want to. All right.
Okay. Yeah. I guess we'll start out with Terry Nichols. I changed my mind again. Um,
Okay. We got the prerogative to change our minds, you know.
yeah. That way, when we get over to Mr. Adams, we can bounce back to Mr. Nichols there. Um, how I was able to
Reap,
come.
hey, Reap the Whirlwind is here. Say hello.
Hello.
Her Ruth. Ruth. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But how I was able to come across this information was conversations that I had had with parties over there at the Radio Shack next door to my office. Um, on my oldest brother's birthday, 1997, and conversations that I'd had with Doug McRae afterwards.
So are you
And
talking about Fred Rogers?
no, Doug McRae.
I mean, your oldest brother is being Fred Rogers?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well, but that wasn't his birthday. He was born in December. My oldest brother Bill was born in January, and this conversation was in January. I don't want to give away his birth date over the internet, or, but anyway, it was during that conversation, and whenever really both Terry Nichols and Blair Adams names had come up in the conversation pertaining to the Oklahoma City bombing and the terrorist attack that they had intended to commit in Montreal, Canada on July the 4th, 1996, there at that large shopping mall.
What's the name of the shopping mall you said?
I don't know the name of it. I just know it's the largest shopping mall there in Montreal, Canada, and that they intended to do the attack on the American Independence Day to cause a conflict between the Canadian government and the United States government.
Was that anywhere around where Blair Adams was?
Well, yes, he worked. He worked for the contracting firm who did the maintenance on that shopping mall. So when the McRays, my brother, and that bunch were in Canada in Montreal, they wound up running across he and his buddy that he worked with in a bar. And of course, these guys, you know, they're some of the most friendliest devils you'll ever meet in your life.
Huh.
You wouldn't think they would harm a fly the way they act and stuff like that. And they're really some of the most dangerous people that you can be around. Is why so many people have fallen victim to their killings and stuff as serial killers and human and child sex traffickers. Is how they can put on them. You know, a lot of them got a heck of a personality. As far as you know, telling jokes, making wisecracks, and but it's pretty much an art. Um,
It's pretty much kind of weird how all these people, a lot of times people say, I don't believe they did that. These were some of the nicest people in the world. I don't believe your daddy would have done that. I really liked your daddy. He was so kind and so gentle. No, that's the way they do. They really believe that these are some of the nicest people in the world, and yet they're some of the deadliest ones.
well, they are, and unlike myself, I was that friendly in sales, um, and I used wisecracks and all to build a people's trust when in order to get the sale. When these guys was to get the victim, and
You get the victim to trust them.
yes, yes, and that's even Rex Harriman, same way. Um, is one of the nicest guys, joking guys you'll ever meet at this group. And you see how many women he's been charged so far with up there in New York and murdering, and now they're finding cases down in Florida, which there's no telling how many women that they have murdered along the just the east coast of the United States alone, all the way from Florida up to New York. Um, I recall the first time I ever met Rex was around June 19th, 1982. Um, we covered it in that one or two of those interviews with you before, where I went down to the Chattahoochee River that night to demand the safe return of my brother Fred and Roger Nance. And that's the night I actually met their buddy Rex Harriman, who was actually in Marietta, Georgia that night. Now, he wasn't down at the Chattahoochee, but he was at this guy Zach's house where everybody met at. And he was in college that I much remembered. And um, I did some digging back on him here about 6 months ago. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Yeah, that's my brother Fred's buddy Rex. So um, there's a lot of cases where there's been men murdered throughout the country by these people. Um, you know, just
Hold
for
on.
having the wrong attitude or knowing something and saying something to somebody else that they felt like they wasn't supposed to say or something like that, and just wind up dead. So
A Terry Nichols was the one that was arrested for the bombing in Oklahoma.
hmm. Yes, the story with Terry, from what I gathered out of them and the Radio Shack, was of course Terry was living in Michigan with his brother. I can't remember his brother's first name, but his brother has a ranch up there in Michigan. And of course Terry, he had been in the army before, um, with Timothy McVeigh. And of course, around the same time that Eric Rudolph was in the army and got discharged from marijuana.
Yeah, wasn't it Rudolph that made the bomb and stuff?
Yes, ma'am. Rudolph made all the explosives, from the um, explosives used on the exterior of the truck bomb, in addition to the five explosives that was placed inside the Arthur P. Murray Federal Building, which only three detonated upon impact from the truck bomb outside of the building.
I want to remember those people that died during that explosion because we got a good friend of ours whose fiance died in that bombing.
Yeah, that was a very, very tragic, very, very tragic ordeal. seeing that on the news the morning that it happened when I was living in Evergreen, Alabama. And we know who I accused of going to do that attack back at a baseball game in 1974 between our elementary schools, and he is a suspect. And I want to iterate now that all this information that I am releasing are my accusations, um, which are the same accusations I'll be making in the state of North Carolina, and that any and all parties mentioned as perpetrators are suspects and are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in the court of law. But what I got about Terry was um, at first he was game about attacking the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building. That they sent him something like, I want to say it was around $12 to $14,000.
It is Southern and accent, Cash. That's what his accent is.
Yeah, I was raised in the South. Um, so they sent him money to get this truck. He was supposed to get newer than a 1987. Um, it had a different rear end that would be capable of hauling, you know, over 800 pounds of fertilizer without tearing up the rear end. Um, and I think they said it was a double clutched rear end that was in the older models that wasn't capable of hauling that amount of fertilizer a very long distance. Um, so they wanted a 1987 and newer model. I think 89 was the ideal model that they wanted him to purchase. But what he did was he went and purchased a 1985 model, which was not the model or year model that they wanted him to get because it had the rear end that would not last. And he bought the truck for around $4,500. Um, and of course, he went and bought the $1,200 worth of fertilizer. It's what it cost back at that time. And on his way back to his brother's ranch, the rear end went out. So, of course, he contacted Murphy, North Carolina. This is when I refer to Murphy, be Murphy, North Carolina. So he contacted the colleagues in Murphy and told them that the rear end had gone out on the truck. So they told him to go ahead and forward them the paperwork of the truck that he had purchased. So he faxed them the paperwork and they found out it was the year truck that they did not want him um, to purchase. So they went online and they found a rear end for an 87 and newer model. And they asked him how much it would cost to get the rear end and get it put in. He told them, I think it was like 2,400, and he could get it one for around 1,800. Well, they told him to go where to find the one for $1,200. So they turned around and sent him another $1,800, 600 to put the other rear, change out the rear ends. And so when he got the money, instead of going online and purchasing the proper rear end, he went to a junkyard and he found the same exact rear end that had, that came in the truck that had tore up previously. So he went back to his brother's ranch. They changed out the rear ends, and he got en route to Missouri, where the truck bomb was assembled. But he only got 8 to 10 miles inside the state of Ohio before the rear end of the truck went out.
So that's basically how he ended up getting caught in it, right?
Well, yes, ma'am, because the way the government looks like it, especially the DOJ, when you're en route somewhere to help participate in a crime, like in this case, the bombing of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building, you've made a step toward the completion of that crime. Now, just because the truck did not make it to Missouri doesn't matter. He purchased the fertilizer. He was en route to Missouri when the truck broke down. And of course, state trooper um, pulled up behind him and found out his truck was broken down. So he dispatched the wrecker out there to tow the truck back to his brother's farm in Michigan. So around 5 miles from his brother's place, he had the tow truck driver to back the truck into this wooded area in some woods.
That's kind of unique or something like that to try to hide something like that in the woods, you know. So, yeah, that's a dead giveaway that this was going to be used for some nefarious reason.
Yeah, um it was a red flag to the tow truck driver that, why would you park, a truck full of fertilizer out in the woods, instead of taking it back to a farm or a ranch where, fertilizer is used. Why would you, have this truck, back into the woods? So of course the tow truck driver, um, he, notified the police, where he had him to dump the truck at. So whenever the bombing did occur, the FBI went in and investigated and found out that um, he had purchased that fertilizer, was supposed to go to Missouri for the construction of the truck bomb, and that's how he wound up being charged with the as an accessory to the Oklahoma City bombing, was because he did purchase the fertilizer. His truck was en route when it broke down, and so that gave the FBI grounds to charge him with accessory to it, and actually, really was more for his personal safety, really than anything, because they were going to kill him um, after his truck broke down the way it did, because that could have hindered their plans to attack the building. However, I'm going to reiterate this again: all parties that I'm mentioning are presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. So Mike Cook of Murphy Building Supply found this out, so he drove back to North Carolina from Independence, Missouri, and loaded up the fertilizer there from Murphy Building Supply and drove back out to Missouri. And that's where the construction of the truck bomb was made. And of course, Timothy McVeigh went and rented the Ryder truck. However, Timothy McVeigh was not the driver of the truck, he was the getaway driver. But the one who resembles Timothy McVeigh the most would be who we discussed before, Doug McRae's nephew, Matt McRae.
Right.
So it was Eric Rudolph and Matt McRae that was seen in the truck bomb um, used to bomb the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building with. Now, they stated they wanted to plant as many as seven explosives on the interior, but they ran out of time. They were only able to put in five. So, whenever the truck bomb detonated outside, only three of the devices, exploded inside the building. That's what caused the floors to collapse. Was these others explosives that had been planted in the building before detonation?
I think it's amazing how, a lot of these trappers and then like the Joe McRae that was in a sexual, with a sex trafficking, and so now his nephew also, Matt McRae, was into that too. And like you said, it's not just the fact that they're sex traffickers, they're also terrorists.
Well, when you say terrorist, from my understanding, um, you're saying the same thing as a child sex trafficker. When you say white supremacist, when I hear that term, first thing that envisions my mind is a sexual predator trying to lead people for their own sinister agenda.
Right.
Um, because to me, this white supremacy thing is really nothing but a ruse. Um,
Well, I'd like to know where I was, where I was given a lot of things when, look, I was trafficked and all this other kind of stuff, and I'm white and I wasn't held up on a pedestal or nothing like that. I was
mhm.
victimized, as well, treated like a slave, tortured, all that different kind of stuff. So I was victimized by these horrific people. It knows no race, it knows no creed, it knows, it's different religions, all this kind of stuff as well. But they do try to go by the rules of religion a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, you'll have them in just about all your churches. Some will be Catholic, some will be Protestant, like Baptist, Methodist, Church of God. I mean, um, and these people, they're really not in the church trying to improve their lives or live for the Lord. But what they say, they're there in those churches for sinister reasons.
But, not,
Not saying
but
everybody
what,
goes to church, go to
hold on a
church.
minute. Hold on a minute. He said white supremacy is not a ruse, but a lot of times they say, scream out white supremacy, that you're racism and all this kind of stuff. When a lot of times, no, we're not racist, but they want to throw up and say that we are a lot of times, and it makes it that much more dangerous whenever they start saying that kind of stuff. When that's farther from the truth, and a lot of just because they might not be the ones that's hired. That's because, when a police officer goes to arrest them for a crime or something, they want to scream that it's racism. No, that's farther from the truth a lot of times. But we all should be treated equally and all that.
Well, yeah. Well, when I say a ruse, it's there's really no there's really no basis for it. Members of the Aryan Republican Army, okay, they were engaged in activities with people, members of the Jewish community, even though um, they speak anti-Jewish, and we've heard it in the movies and on the media about being against the Jewish people and all that. Well, if that's the case, then why was people like Eric Rudolph, who we know was white supremacist, okay, having illicit conduct with people like Ghislaine Maxwell in the 1990s? Um, why is people like Ron Burrell involved in this stuff, being a member of the Mossad, executive with Home Depot, um, Bernie Marcus and all these people that were tied in with the Bentleys and this bunch that are these so forth called white supremacists. You know, my brother Fred was a member of the Midwestern Bank Bandits. He went around with these people and he robbed banks. He's a serial killer, pedophile, child murderer. Okay, but the narrative that we get out of the Aryan Republican Army is, you know, they were anti-Zionist, want to overthrow the government and stuff like that, the bombing of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building. But on the other hand, why are they out there working on this stuff with people who I know that are members of the Mossad? And that's when I say white supremacy is a ruse. It's pretty much always been a ruse because the people out there pushing it are really your Jewish Zionist people and who are actually Caucasian themselves.
Do they try to put out the ruse that they're really Jewish when they're really not? They're just trying to pretend to be to cause a division. Is that what it is?
That's pretty much what it is. That's why you have the people in Jerusalem and Gaza who are actually Jewish, Israeli descent, that has a problem with the Israeli government because the Israeli government does not represent them. And a lot of these Zionists, they're not on the same page with the other Jewish people. That's why we're seeing this stuff on social media now about the um, um, I have to excuse me. I just read Cash's comment there, but um, I have friends that I you know used to run with that were Jewish, and they did not have a problem mingling with people of the Christian faith. Never had a problem with it all. But when you get into the Zionists, um, it's like if a child is Christian, it doesn't matter what race, if he's Caucasian or black, they're going to prey on those children. Very rarely will you see a Jewish child abducted and sold into sex trafficking. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's really not that common like it is of children of Caucasian, Latino, and of course African descent. And
And I think part of the thing you're saying about the ruse is because they want to keep throwing in the race card a lot of times when it's nothing to do with the race at the time, right?
well, yeah, it goes back to the thesis over the Rothschilds. You know, they would go in and finance both sides of a war. Well, it's the same analogy here. You go over and you get the black community hating the white community, and the white community hating the black community. On both Christian communities, you can go in and get them killing each other. Then you can come out and take out the remaining survivors, and you got your complete Zionist state. I
That's the
mean,
ones
that's
that owns the bacon industry and everything, right? Basically,
now.
is that the ones that ate on the bacon industry mainly, or what?
I still didn't understand and get all the question.
Are the Zionists that base? Are they the ones that basically run the banking industry?
Pretty much. Larry Fink, um, he's Jewish. Les Wexner is Jewish. Bernie Marcus was Jewish. Arthur Blank is Jewish. Ron Brill is Jewish. And I've had my personal encounters with Mr. Brill. And so I know for a fact the what we call as the Aryan Republican Army, Army of God, was very well involved in with the Mossad in the terrorist attacks in the United States since 1995.
And see, the thing about it is, we are not racist. We know that all races, the white, Caucasian, the black, African, different nationalities, and we should come together as one and unite
Mm-hmm.
to fight, against this type of thing going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people remembers the reporter showing up over there in Young Harris and asking Zell Miller, who was governor of Georgia at the time, what his relationship with his employee Eric Rudolph was. And Zell sat there and he told the public, well, he didn't know him personally. He was a um
Right.
yeah, I agree with that. Reap the whirlwind about Levi. Yes. Milton Frady, one of the biggest scumbags I've ever met, is white supremacist.
Yep. So there are some white supremacists out there and everything, but a lot of things are trying to divide us and keep saying that everybody's racist, basically, and that's not true. That's what we're getting at, okay?
Yeah. Well, there's a difference between a white separatist and a white supremacist because you have people like that in the black community that don't agree with marrying outside their race. Doesn't mean they hate the people of another race. Is they want to preserve, their race. They put it. I think we're all the human race, but their ethnic group they want to preserve. Um, you have people Hispanic. They don't want to marry outside of the you know Hispanic bloodlines. So it's really what we call separatism. Now, um, racism is really supposed to be proud of your race, but what I call prejudicial racism is when you hate another race just based upon their skin color and or their culture, their religion. And um and we know that Timothy McVeigh was brought up Catholic. We know that Eric Rudolph was um mother was brought up Catholic till she converted to Messianic Judaism, is what we know it today. But the reason why I say the white supremacy is a ruse is because it's backed by Jewish money, and all this was backed by Jewish money. Um, Now, a lot of people are not keen to understand that Fox theaters, for example, tried to have their own theater in Atlanta hit with a truck bomb on Valentine's Day, 1997. Nor are a lot of people keen that the Northside Family Planning Services attack was a diversion attack for the DeVry Institute of Technology that was in Buckhead there in Atlanta before it moved its campus. Um, a lot of people in Cobb County still talk about the June 19th, 1997 attempted truck bombing of the Home Depot corporate headquarters. And it was Arthur Blank, Bernie Marcus, Ken Lagone, and Ron Brill. And believe it or not, even though Craig Manier did not start to work for the Home Depot Corporation till September later that year, he was very well involved in the attempted truck bombing of the Home Depot corporate headquarters.
Hi, Carrie. It's good to see you back.
Hello, Carrie. So, um, of course, now I don't know if the owners of Six Flags weren't keen to the bombing of Six Flags. But I know that some of these places, Fox Theaters and the Home Depot, they tried, they were responsible for the bomb attacks on their own places. 203 employees was working at the corporate headquarters. Used to be located across the road from the store location there at Cumberland Parkway at West Paces Ferry Road. And they had just put the earnest money on the land where the corporate headquarters is located today, just 2 weeks before they tried to have their corporate headquarters hit with a truck bomb. And now they did try to hit both General Motors assembly plants in 1997. The first attack on the General Motors assembly plant was March 11th, 1997, another anniversary of the Atlanta child murders. Not
That
all
one
of
got stopped. That one got stopped, didn't it? But are they back in that building again, or what
no,
happened?
no. The General Motors assembly plant in Doraville, um, it has been destroyed. It's there. I think there's a Best Buy there now. They had to wait. I forgot how many years for all of the gas and the distillates from the gasoline or oil there at the facility to evaporate out of the ground before it'd be safe to build any other type of structures on. But it
He's
was a
asking.
state of the art.
He's asking if you got the proof behind everything or something like that too.
Of course, I mean,
But
uh,
it's thinking to go up to some.
tons of people lived in Doraville and still live in Doraville. Who remembers the attempted bombings March 11th, 1997? I can run a Craigslist ad and probably gain probably around, at least 100 people that'd be willing to come forward and verify that March 11th, 1997, they did at least try to hit one or two out of 14 targets that morning. A lot of this is common knowledge in Atlanta because of the magnitude of targets that they tried to hit in the metropolitan Atlanta. For example, the June 3rd, 1997 bomb attack at the Ball Ground Little League baseball game. I have run into some people that were at that baseball game. I'm not going to mention their names. So there's plenty of proof out here to prove what we're saying, back up what we're saying. And there's plenty of witnesses. They've not been able to get to all the witnesses yet because it's just how many. That's just how big that this thing was, and I understand a lot of people's perspective because 27 years over disarmament of a hydrogen bomb, would probably even have me questioning a lot of stuff myself if I didn't know any better. But that's the only reason why these terrorists were permitted to get away as long as they did was primarily over that hydrogen bomb that they had set to detonate 36 hours from 7 p.m. the night of January 28th, 1998 over there at Cook Ridge in Murphy, North Carolina.
We got people at Facebook and here, Cash. Yeah, there are so many people that's even remembered about the bombs that they try to do at the ball fields and stuff.
Well, yeah, there was 96 baseball fields that they had planted explosives in. Of course, in 1998, 1999, Eric Rudolph had to go around and show my colleagues where they were to where they could be recovered. And of course, a lot of them were turned over to the Forsyth County Sheriff's Department before being turned over to the state of North Carolina.
And let's talk
And
about Forsyth and Georgia, everyone that didn't know, right?
Forsyth County. Now, Cumming, Georgia is the county seat of Forsyth County, and that's where Levi Frady is from.
Oh boy, that's where they tried to. Well, we went over that. We're not going to get too much into that Levi Frady, but they
Hmm.
tried to was trying to get you over there at that time to try to set you up.
Yeah, they when they couldn't set me up for the Centennial Park attack and the fake attack of Mike Cook's first wife, Rhonda, on September 11th, 1996. They even tried to set me up for the homicide of John Bonet, and I've never been to Colorado in my life. I know that my stun gun and my mag light was stolen by my brother Fred. And when I did get the mag light back, two sections of it was missing, and the lens of it was moving. But I never did get the stun gun back. And of course,
And
Rudolph
they
and his
did use.
buddies over at Murphy. Uh-huh.
I think they did use a stun gun on John Bonet too, right?
Yeah, I believe it's my stun gun that my brother Fred stole from me was the stun gun that they used on John Bonet. I mean, I have no way to prove it, and I'm really not going to beat my brains out to proving it. But John Ramsey was very much involved in the plot to overthrow the United States government and throw our country into turmoil through domestic terrorism. And so
They
he
said a
is on
bag
my
light.
list of suspects for the state of North Carolina. We might not can get him for the children that they have murdered outside of the state of North Carolina, but we could charge him and Eric Rudolph, her water skiing instructor, Ghislaine Maxwell, and a lot of these other so forth called Jews and Christians and all them that was involved in domestic terrorism that we know who they are.
Right.
Um, so
And
John
so
Ramsey may not ever get charged with any of the children he's ever murdered, but he is going to be charged with treason and seditious conspiracy and being a member of a secret society under the general statutes of North Carolina. Levi Frady's dad, Milton Frady, is going to be charged for the same thing.
and so when they ended up arresting Terry Nichols, was there anybody else that they had arrested in that Centennial bombing?
Well, this was before the Centennial Park attack. We're still back in Oklahoma.
Okay.
They had Michael Fortier wanted to
I mean,
charge.
that's what I meant. That's bombing at Terry Nichols. So sorry.
Yeah, yeah. There was Timothy McVeigh, Michael Fortier, and his girlfriend, and of course Michael. He did not think that they was going to actually carry through with the attack, so he didn't even report it or anything. And well, they did succeed in attacking the building. So when he was brought in for questioning, he wound up turning state's evidence against them and uh, sentenced to serve 10 years so his girlfriend wouldn't have to go to prison either. And he's been given a new identity and is living um, at an undisclosed location.
Yeah, we get. Yeah, there's reasons why he's got a protected name.
Yeah, yeah, I have to protect his name. Um, but Terry Nichols, he cooperated. But Terry's really more like in for witness protection when all this comes out. He should be able to clear the matters up and at least get time served for the amount of time that he has served, um, for the amount of time they've had him in prison. And
And who do
that's
you
one
be?
reason for that was Jimmy Hunt appointed me to my position on January 29th, 1998, and Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, um, for whatever reasons, did not want me to proceed. But Jimmy Hunt's daughter's Rachel Hunt is the lieutenant governor of the state of North Carolina now. And so it may not answer the total question, but hopefully that partially answers your question for you.
Do you ask what Charles? Why have charges not been brought yet?
Well, again, they had a 263-pound hydrogen bomb. The 10-pound core was surrendered to the ATF right around 9:30 p.m. January 28, 1998, while truck bomb number 14 was en route to Mobile, Alabama, to attack the FBI field office down there.
So they did have the explosion at the FBI office as well, or did they catch it in advance?
No, Special Agent Ron Vincent of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, who was the chief investigator for the Centennial Park attack for the state of Georgia, he is the agent who helped me stop the truck bomb attack at the FBI field office.
Thank
He
you so
worked
much
out of
for that.
Cleveland, Georgia, but he used to live in Suches. So whenever Rudolph and them arrived, which Rudolph was not the one driving his pickup truck that morning, was actually the anonymous caller to the Centennial Park attack, Wayland Joseph Davis of Murphy, North Carolina, who was driving Eric Rudolph's pickup truck the morning of January 29th, 1998. He is the one who killed Officer Robert Sanderson and injured abortionist Emily Lyons over there at the New Women's Healthcare Clinic.
They lead you to believe that they were activists, trying to protect the killing of unborn babies and stuff, and that's not what this organization and what they're doing is all about, really.
Yeah, yes, I'm confident charges will happen because Darlene is not the only person that's done interviews with me. And for those who are on Telegram, you can go over to the um, Traveler Spreads Truth Patriot forum over there. And they have some of the documents that I presented from the Roger Nance case in the Fulton County State Court. They have shared that information with the public as well. Um,
That's also with that case where two of the barns had to be put down too, right? Knocked down.
what's that?
Is that where the case also where they ended up disposing of two of the barns?
Well, no, Nance sued me for libel. His attorney Casey Levy filed a tort against me for libel. So in my summary judgment, we shot that down. I have no reason to go out here and make stuff up and accuse innocent parties, as they would say, of committing horrific crimes.
Exactly.
I have enough witnesses and proof that proves that whenever I say someone did this or someone said they did this, that there's proof to back up what I say. Um, I do not stoop down to the level of my enemies who will go out here and falsely accuse people or innocent people of doing things that they, didn't do. So no, I don't step down to these terrorist level and just lie about other people.
And it's
Um,
kind of bad that there's been people that's in jail who they basically had framed just because one of them did not want to go to jail. I feel sorry for those people, and I hope they get justice and get out of jail, and the right people are put behind bars who did all this, right?
Mm, yeah. And, 2013, they still had their panties tied in a knot that Eric Rudolph was the only one charged, and he shouldn't have been the only one sitting in. And it's like, well, good, go turn yourselves in. That way he's not in there alone. And, so what they do, they release him under a new name, Eric Nafeth, and, he's out there working under that name in Abilene, Texas as we speak.
Yeah, and he's at an old folks home or something like that, taking care of the elderly or something, right?
He just goes out to their homes and takes care of them in
Oh,
their homes. So, you know, I mean, he is the last person I would want in taking care of my elderly parent or grandparent. I mean, if you can't trust them around a little girl or a little boy, what makes you think you would trust them around an elderly person? You know,
you got that right.
I mean, what I will say about his mother, and she may not did the best job raising her boys, but one thing I could say about Pat Murphy, she did raise a very, very nice lady named Mara Rudolph because I really do regret making them leave North Carolina the way I did. Pat, she wanted to go to Raleigh and settle up there, around Raleigh. But at the time, I didn't think it would be safe or a good idea for any of the Rudolphs to be in North Carolina when all this, hits the fan. Especially Pat and Mara, um, because after Pat lost Robert, he died from cancer. Um, what's his name? Tom Flanagan. I know Tom. Tom convinced her to move her family up there, um, where she wouldn't have to worry about them getting on drugs and into mischief and all that. Like they stood a better chance of in Florida. And dang if they didn't wind up in a worse situation there in North Carolina than what she could have ever imagined. Down there in Florida, even if she moved in Palm Beach. Would have been a better situation than up there in Topton, North Carolina by the time he got tied in with that crowd over there at Murphy Building Supply. But I always try to encourage people to keep Pat Murphy and Mara Rudolph in their prayers, um, because those are very genuine people I have met. Tom Flanagan was a very genuine person. I hope he's still around. He had a few brushes with the law over some weapons charges, but Tom was the type of man that would give you the shirt off his back. And so, so Terry Nichols wound up conning the wrong people. Um,
You got those pictures down? Okay, I can take them down. Yeah, they make you sit looking at them, don't it? There you go. Is that any better?
yeah. But anyway, now what a lot of people don't know, except for those who work in government, was that on July the 4th, 1996, they was going to attack this large shopping mall there in Montreal, Canada. Because the Canadians don't celebrate July the 4th. It's not the Canadian holiday like it is the United States. So what they did, they went up there to Montreal and they found two employees that worked for the contracting firm that did the maintenance on that shopping mall. And that was Blair Adams and his buddy. They both worked at the same place. And they found him in the bar.
Blair
Uh,
Adams and whom?
a buddy of his he worked with.
And you said they worked construction, right?
Yes, ma'am. They worked in for this construction company that did the maintenance on that shopping mall. So, these guys, of course, they buy them drinks and kind of treat them out there for a few nights, taking them to bars, hooking them up with prostitutes, taking them to strip clubs and all that, grooming them up and buttering them up because they knew who they worked for. Is the reason why they went out looking for them to see if they could befriend them and partner with them and get them into helping them do their terrorist attack there in Canada. So around the third or fourth night, this is what I get out the same conversation over there at the Radio Shack on my oldest brother Bill's birthday there in January '97, which was before any of the string of attacks of 1997, by the way. Um, they finally get them out to this one bar and they're talking and you know, they explained to them that they were the ones who, attacked the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building. And told them that they was planning to do an attack there in Canada on the shopping mall that the contracting firm they worked for did the maintenance at. And told them how they could become wealthy, they could live abroad under new identities, and even though they would be wanted by the FBI, they would be able to avoid detection and all that in Europe and all that. And told them not to give them an answer that night, but to let them know what they thought the next evening. So they brought them back out the next evening. And Blair's buddy, he didn't want any part to do with it. He was closely tied with his family, did not want to give up his family. There was not any kind of money in the world that would motivate him to break off the ties with his family and disappear and hide out as an international terrorist. But
Yeah.
Blair, he was all game. Um, um, Blair was like, "Well, yeah, I'm game. Yeah, I'll do it." And so they wind up throwing him like 30 for about 30,000, $35,000. Um, 15,000 of it, I think it was this type of device that he was supposed to purchase for the central heating and air ventilation system that was going to pump out this poisonous gas into the department stores and the shopping mall. So when the customers started seeing other people dropping dead from this poisonous gas, they were all going to start running out like this human stampede out of the shopping mall. And as they came out the entrance at exits, they was going to be mowed down like rats by fully automatic machine guns. There's going to have these shooters waiting on them to come exiting, and they were just going to kill them as they were exiting the mall. And I'm not familiar with the Sarah in Tokyo. Um, I'm not too certain about what Cash is talking about there.
I'm probably talking about with the Surrey because you said something about Surrey, North, where he was living. So
Hmm.
I'm thinking that's like that's right here. Blair was who was from Surrey, British Columbia. So I'm wondering if that's what you meant. He meant by that, maybe.
Could be. I really don't know a lot about his background, his lineage, nor his heritage. But what he did was he played along. They gave him the money to get the device, the poison, and all. And so when July the 4th came up, they all traveled up to Canada. They're all got, everybody's geared up for the terrorist attack. Well, he didn't order the device like he had told him he had ordered. So that totally blew their plans for the attack when he didn't do that. And he told them he could still order it. And then they were like, no, no, no. We wanted it for July the 4th. It had to be on July the 4th. So he realized then he had made a mistake. And so he goes to his employer, quits his job, gets his paycheck. He had already had airline tickets from Canada to Germany. So he goes and he purchases another airline ticket to Washington. Well, when he got to the airport, customs would not allow him to board the airplane. So I don't know if he had an automobile or if he purchased an automobile or if he rented one, but he wound up driving, you know, from through the Canadian border into the United States, and he went to Washington and he tried to meet with the FBI, and something happened there to where he wasn't able to meet with the FBI. So he drove on down to Knoxville, Tennessee. Well, we remember who lived in Knoxville before the Alfred P. Murray federal building attack was Andrea Strassmeyer. So that was his only option, was to go back to Knoxville. He had taken everything out of his life savings, out of his safety deposit boxes, the uncut gemstones, his silver bars, his gold bars, um, some uncut diamonds and gemstones and stuff like that. And he went, you know, to Knoxville. I guess he figured if he could just give them all of his money, that they would be like, well, okay, well, now that you paid us back, fine, yeah, we'll let it ride. Well, no, they was not going to allow another Terry Nichols to be running the streets. So when he got back to Knoxville, he went to this motel. He rented the motel, but he never went into the motel room after he checked in. And so they found him next door at this new motel that was under construction. And um, so he apparently got in touch with the people over at Murphy. So they sent my brother Fred and his bunch up there to Knoxville. And
Hold on a minute, Charles. I want to let them know that you've got other interviews on my channel where you talk about your brother, you talk about what had happened when you were younger, and how you actually met John Ramsey. and how John Ramsey was introduced to you from um, as your brothers as because you're fixing to meet one of the Atlanta child murderers and all that. So his
Yeah.
brother was involved in all this different kind of stuff too. Okay, but Charles Rogers would they went ahead and was telling Charles. There's been so many times that they expose and tell Charles these things, and then they go after him and try to kill him. Um, so I'm so grateful that you're telling your story and sharing your story with us, and that you're still with us. Thank God for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, they would not have told me the stuff that they told me if they did not have any intentions of killing me. Um, because loose lips sink ships, and if you're dead, you can't talk. So the same people that tried to sex traffic me in 1972 and 1973 at 6 and 7 years of age, but also sex trafficked you as a child was also involved in this mess with the bombing of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building and all the other terrorist attacks of 1997 into early 1998. And that is Ed Bentley Jr., the CEO of Bentley Enterprises, who manufactures the silencers for the U.S. military. And of course, his cousins over at Bentley and Bentley Law Group there in Marietta, Georgia, um, also involved. But back to Blair. Um, they went over there to meet with him, and I guess he tried to pay them back all the money he had, and the money was not the issue because some of these people they're loaded. So money was not the issue. It was the principle. So my brother took the tire thumper that he used to check the tires on the dump trucks and the 5 foot pry bar that we used on the heavy equipment. And that is what was used to rape Blair Adams with and used to kill him was the tire thumper and the 5 foot pry bar that um, we used on my dad's development in 1998. Um, and how I know it was the tire thumper was one day I was out there and he needed to check the tires of his dump truck and I grabbed it up by the wrong end of the handle. He go, well, you don't want to be handling that in without washing your hands. I'm like, why? Well, because of where it's been. I said, well, where's it been? Well, it's been up
Yes.
somebody's butt.
Oh boy. Did y'all get
So
that? Did y'all hear what he just said? That his brother said that that tire iron was used up someone's
yeah, up their butt to behind.
right. So you don't want to be handling that. So
Yeah.
what would how would a brother know something like that unless he used it on somebody a lot of their way home?
Hmm.
So also, you've got other proof behind some other people saying something about that after, right?
Well, yeah, some of the guys that they used to help hide Eric Rudolph and wound up saving my life in September 1999. Um, the ones who actually killed Frank Sheldon, Dave Holloway, and Andrea Strassmeyer on September the 23rd, 1999, they witnessed the murder of Blair Adams.
Oh boy. Hello, lighting the way home.
So I found out in September 1999 that my suspicions about that tire thumper was correct. That it was actually my brother who was really the main instigator and the one who actually killed Blair Adams. Um, he was hit in the stomach with such force with that 5 foot pry bar that it killed him. That's what killed him. And they left him there with all the money all of his uncut gemstones. He had U.S., Canadian, and German currency. Um, just to
Yeah,
show
he didn't get
anyone
robbed.
else.
All his money and his gold and stuff was still there, so it was not a robbery. And he was trying to say, "They're going to kill me. They're going to kill me, and somebody's going to kill me." And they kept saying, "Well, he's insane. Nobody's going to do that to him." He knew, something was going to happen. You know what I'm saying? He knew.
Uh,
And what I don't understand is how come his keys were not there at first, and then later it was there. You know what I mean? Why did he have a different set of keys? How did he end up with a different set of car keys than what the car that he was driving? It didn't make sense to me unless that was an absolute setup when they
yeah,
did have his keys. And so he's going, knowing where his keys were. And so he ended up going over there where the killer was to get the car keys or something like that. That's how he ended up with the other keys back because it don't make sense. For him to be robbed and murdered and sexually assaulted like that using a tire iron, that is a hate crime.
yeah,
Very bad hate crime.
yeah. And what gets me was the attorney there in Knoxville who did the newspaper article. I forgot what year it was.
That's
Um,
Jesus.
he would do some commentaries in the newspaper. So I decided to call him at his office one day and told him I had the answers to Blair Adams' homicide. So he wanted to hear what I had to offer. So I sat there and I told him. He got mad and hung up. So even Detective Davenport made the statement back in 1999 that he wasn't going to make any efforts to, or any more efforts to solve the Blair Adams homicide. Because you have to look at the fear factor. Um, they know that there's members of what we call the deep state involved. Um, I mean, which is apparent when you got Eric Rudolph working working for Georgia Governor Zell Miller, whose wife Shirley Carver was president of the Federal Reserve Bank branch there in Atlanta. Um, you know, going on dates in Helen, Georgia with Ghislaine Maxwell. When that picture of John Bonet was taken with her there during Oktoberfest of 1996. Of course, Hunter Biden was supposedly their sidekick that afternoon because there are a lot of people, I'm surprised, in Atlanta or outskirts of Atlanta that knows all about the incident where, my brother and the bunch caught Hunter Biden and Eric Rudolph in the bathroom in a motel there in Young Harris, Georgia, um, smoking crack only in their BVDs.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I remember that. They had that little
mhm.
track. Yeah.
Yeah, that was after I'd stopped the bomb attack at the Ball Ground Little League baseball game. If I remember correctly, I was around June the 7th. That two of the Cook brothers, so he brought Hunter Biden over there to Murphy from Young Harris, and that's when we had our little conversation. And he was in Boulder when John Bonet was murdered, and we had a discussion about that, and he didn't like what he saw neither. So that's how I managed to get my meeting with his uncle Jim. And Jim agreed what they do to these children is terrible and it needs to come to a stop.
Yeah. And
And
and it's pretty pathetic. Like when you got to go to North Carolina and they need to come and supposed to have a conference that thing, right?
mhm. Well, it's still part of the deal for the surrender of the hydrogen bomb. Cause of course the cooks wasn't going to be there when it went off. They probably was going to be down there in the Bahamas, maybe at Allen St. James for all we know, but they wasn't going to be at home when the feds come in there to grab them. if they had successfully hit the FBI down there in Mobile. Of course, Governor Hunt was going to have no choice but to declare a state of emergency and move the National Guard into that region that afternoon. But around 9:17 a.m. is when Matt McRae and Eric Rudolph and two Thrasher brothers arrived in Mobile and discovered 34 agents out there loading up their gear into their vehicles to head up to Murphy to search for Eric for the attack of the new women's healthcare clinic, which was impossible for anyone to suspect Eric Rudolph at that moment because it was a 30-minute walk from the new women's healthcare clinic back to his pickup truck. Which I wasn't Eric who was driving his pickup truck that morning. It was Joey Davis. But it was 30-minute walk from point zero back to Eric's pickup truck. So it was impossible for anyone in Mobile to know or anywhere to know that Rudolph had anything to do with the attack on the new women's healthcare clinic if it had not been for my buddy over at the GBI getting word down there. And of course, we can thank the veterans who love to fish over there in Western North Carolina for helping me to get that done, be it where I could get over to Suches and meet with Ron that day. Because they did not want to deal with, National Guard, Delta Force, and all that coming in up there on them as well. And nobody really wanted the feds in Western North Carolina. Even I didn't want the feds in Western North Carolina. But the deep state definitely wanted the feds, but not in the way that they came up there that afternoon. It was just a caravan of about 150, 160 agents that came rolling into Murphy that afternoon.
Whoa.
And that was still a lot. They came up there cocked and loaded, and people couldn't understand why they came rolling into Murphy the way they came rolling in just over at a bombing of an abortionist provider, why they came in with their M16s cocked and loaded and all that. Well, once they found out they went down there and tried to kill 350 federal agents in Mobile, Alabama, well, that eased the tensions there in Western North Carolina between the people and the feds once they found that out. Because before that, they were all looking at Eric Rudolph like he was this huge hero, doing God's will, going out there and, killing these abortionists who was murdering unborn children and thinking that he was doing God's work, killing these murderers and all that. And come to find out, he was a doggone child murderer. And pedophile. When his mother went out there to the U.S. courthouse in Birmingham that afternoon, he entered his plea out there.
Was that Birmingham, Alabama, or where?
Yes, ma'am, Birmingham, Alabama. That's when I had my conversation with Rick Jewell, and
Right.
he and I partnered up and became buddies. Because Rick, could not understand why he was a suspect, after being the hero in the Centennial Park attack. But the fact that they had postponed the attack from the 25th of July to the 27th of July on my daughter's birthday, that was the only terms that I told the feds when I met with them in Pace, Florida on July the 15th of 1996 that I would take the case.
Hey,
Once I got to Murphy, that they would postpone the attack 2 days to my daughter's birthday and try to set me up, I would take the case then.
right. I
So
want to
that's
tell
how I ended up That's how I wound up with the case. I got drafted. I didn't
Said
apply.
we're saying in a nice way. Um, this is warning, but let you tell the people what Eric Rudolph had asked you, and then you told his mother on what the question was, and she really wanted to shoot Eric because of that question. Y'all listen to this. This is ridiculous. The sickening question that Eric had asked Charles Rogers many years ago. Okay.
Yeah, if you have any children in the room, um, wise or elderly that don't want to hear something like this, you might want to turn the speaker down, or go to a room where they can't hear it. But it was the same conversation that I had with them over in the Radio Shack. My oldest brother's birthday in '97. This also came up. They asked me what I thought about the 8-year-old boys that had been murdered out in West Memphis, Arkansas, and about the 3 boys that had been charged with the murder. And of course, I really wasn't that familiar with the West Memphis 3, hardly at all. I really didn't know that much. I just know there was 3 8-year-old boys that had been murdered in West Memphis, Arkansas, that had occult, um, appearance of occult activity involved, and that these 3 teenagers had did a satanic ritual and murdered these, 3 8-year-old boys is all I knew. And so they brought that up, and I told them what I thought, and they was like, well, we're just going to let you know we're the ones that went out there and murdered those 3 8-year-old boys.
Oh wow.
And Rudolph comes out and asks me, he goes, um, yeah, Charles, have you ever sucked the blood out of a dead boy's penis?
Whoa.
And I was like,
He
no, I
actually said
cannot honestly say that I have. And he goes, well, there's no drug in the world like it, buddy.
so. It's the he said he thinks that the Memphis Three, I think, is related folk.
Yeah, I was part of the satanic panic. They started out with the satanic panic in the 80s, in the rock music and stuff like that. And you might as well take the panic out of it or put it back in it, because we do have a reason to panic over Satanism in this country, because these are very much what I call satanic rituals. Um, um,
It really is like a spiritual warfare going on.
yeah, it really is. You know, um, these people don't go to church on Sunday mornings because they want to be, upstanding Christians. That's for sure. Um, when you torture a child, um, humiliate and torture, um, and terrorize a child, you can call it anything in the world you want to. To me, it's satanic. I mean, only a devil would have the audacity to do something like that to a child, or even to another human being. Um, I don't agree with murder unless it's self defense. The only person that I can honestly say I killed in my life was in self defense. It was in 2006 after the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein. 2 guys come over at Chico Deals, this bar there in Marietta, Georgia, and come and told me that I was going to leave with them, and I wouldn't leave with them, and they decided that they were going to force me to leave with them, and one got put in the ICU, with a broke jaw, broke cheekbone, and the other one succumbed to his injuries around midnight that night from his broken jaw and his broken cheekbone. And those were around. I think all I needed was about one more knockout, and I would have been at 20. That's how many people I've had to knock out in my life for my meeting with Jim Biden. After I met with Hunter, um, he set up a meeting with his uncle, and I had another boy come out there and told me he was going to beat me to death, and dang if I didn't paralyze him for right around 2 years.
And
But he sure never told me he was going to beat me to death.
Didn't Hunter Biden say something to the effect that he had been SA'd as well, sexually assaulted?
Yeah, he said he got pulled into this mess when he was like 8 years old, um, through the people that his dad associated with. So he got dragged into this mess at an early age. I mean, he wasn't but 18 years old back in 1997. Nice looking kid. He could have had just about any girlfriend he wanted, but they already had him. Eric Rudolph and the Cooks already had him on smoking crack, and well, like I said, John, Francis, and Robert Cook, they grew up with Zell Miller and his brothers. They used to have their mud clods across the creek at each other, North Carolina versus Georgia,
And
because
you also,
Brasstown, the community of Brasstown, North Carolina, is right there on the Georgia state line where it joins Young Harris, Georgia. So these people were like family.
said that Eric Rudolph was John Benet Ramsey's ski instructor, right?
Yes, he taught her and other children water skiing lessons.
Gotta go do the music. Have a good one, Cass. Thanks for coming in. God bless.
When he got out of the army, he remodeled Jimmy and Rosalind Carter's house in Plains, Georgia.
Was this one of the times that he was on the run as well?
Ma'am?
You remember when he was on the run and all that? That there were different people that was letting them come into their homes and do different things.
Well, he was, before he went on the run, Zell Miller built this new resort over at the Brasstown Valley Golf Club there in Young Harris. And you can go into these Lakita Inns and a lot of these motels, and you'll see this kind of a rough texture finish on the walls. It'll be kind of smooth. It's kind of a form of a stucco type. But you can see where they go over it with the mud, and it's got the pits, and
Right.
but it's smooth, somewhat smooth. Well, that's the kind of work that Eric Rudolph did, was texture and sheetrock like that, and and sheetrock and mud and sheetrock and all that. That's what Eric specialized in. I'm not going to say the name of another one of our buddies who became a good buddy of mine. He did the same thing. He did some jobs
That part.
with Eric, but whenever Eric went on the run, they went to him, wanted to know if he could go over there and finish the job, and he didn't want any dealings with Zell Miller whatsoever. And so one day, a couple of boys came over there to Waffle King and Murphy and said, "Well, we couldn't find anybody to go over there and finish the job that Eric was doing." I said, "Well, tell him to go over there and finish the job."
You go tell him you're not Eric Rudolph's boss. He was like, you know.
So, so at night after everybody went home, he was over there, after dark, finishing the job on the resort for Zell Miller and Shirley Carver. And after that was complete, yeah, there was people that hid him out up there because, like I said, they only thought that he had killed an abortionist or police they were told a dirty cop and injured an abortionist, and at the Centennial Park he didn't do that, which everybody knew he didn't do the attack at Centennial Park himself because some of them was up there in Hanging Dog with him and his brother Daniel the night of the Centennial Park attack. So a
It's
lot
kind
of
of
people
weird.
up there knew he did not do the attack on Centennial Park.
He didn't do the attack, but he made the bombs.
Yeah, he made the bombs. Well, it's like that day I drove over there to meet with Ron Vincent. You know,
How are you, Bar?
um, you know, he wasn't home when I went by his house, but he went down to the general store, and I called him just after he passed my brother Fred's house there on 180. And I stopped him, and he's like, Charles, what is it? I said, well, we need to have a talk. So, well, just pull over here. So I backed up, and he pulled inside me. And I was like, you got any new leads over who attacked that park yet? No, we've ran out of new leads. We've not had any new developments. And why? I said, well, you mean you and the boys didn't check into the Radio Shack over there in Murphy? Well, I know you keep saying that doggone Radio Shack over there in Murphy. Was there something, that I don't know? I said, yeah, I think it was on a Wednesday morning. I was like, yeah, this coming Wednesday, they're going to hit another abortion provider over there in Birmingham, and they'll go down and they're going to blow up 350 federal agents there at the FBI of Mobile. Do what?
Oh boy.
You know what this means? If this doesn't happen, I looked at him, I said, Ron, do you honestly think that I would have the tracking devices and the bugs moved from my vehicle to where I could drive all the way over here from Murphy, North Carolina and commit a felony and giving you a false report? Well, no, Charles, I'd hate to think that you'd ride over here and give me a false report like that. And I said, well, there. I said, you need to tell your boys to tell the guys down in Mobile, they better be ready that after they hit that abortion, I called it clinic back then. So if they hit that abortion clinic over in Birmingham, and it's Wednesday morning, they better be ready because they're coming after them with another truck bomb. And he goes, all right, you do this. I want you back at my house Wednesday night. I said, all right, well, I'll see you at your house Wednesday night. So that's how they found out. Was from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation that they was going to be hit down there in Mobile 17 to 19 minutes after the attack on the new women's healthcare clinic.
Wow.
So
I want to tell people too that you are in the process. You got somebody that's going to be writing your book for you.
yes, I have a doctor who's writing my book for me. It's bad enough having to write the incident reports and discuss the stuff. As it is, I don't want to write any books. I never really wanted to be out in the open, publicly known. I've always been I wouldn't say reclusive, but I like my privacy. I like my private life. I've
Like
always
me,
liked working for a living.
It's
you
like
know.
me. I wish I didn't have to get out and expose the things I'm having to expose either. It's like I was thrown into it, you know. It's like I didn't feel like I had any choice really, but
Yeah,
I got to stick up and stand up for people, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, really, we didn't know what to do. They surrendered the 10-pound core. Um, they agreed. It was the craziest deal I came up with. Um, I knew Judge McLaughlin and the Bentleys and Marietta were already involved, but I didn't know who all in Georgia were involved. They wasn't going to do me any favors in giving me the names,
Right.
and they were all terrified of going to Cobb County Jail. Well, that's because a couple other buddies wound up getting sexually assaulted by some black guys, um, which to them wouldn't been any big deal if they'd have been Caucasian, but they dreaded the thought about someone being black raping them.
Yeah, they were black and they were raping the black people
Well,
themselves.
yeah, I mean,
I mean, yeah, they didn't want turnabout's fair play, you know, when they got that back at them, you know. And don't get me
well,
wrong, rape is rape no matter what, you know. But these people were going like this and doing this to the a lot of people, you know.
well, that's like when I was hostage over there with those three employees at the Brenner Center, on Buford Highway there in Doraville, morning March 11th, '97. There was going to be three truck bombs that morning, 14 terrorist attacks. One truck bomb was for the IRS building there on Buford Highway. Another one was for the MARTA rail station, going to destroy the bridge. And the other one was the first truck bomb attempt of the General Motors assembly plant. But I was the only white person working in that rent center that morning doing a sample cleaning on a sofa love seat for them. So they thought, or told. I was supposed to work at the location that was north of Interstate 285 instead of the one south. So that weekend they went over there and they set up their surveillance at the rent center that was north of 285 because that's where they thought I was going to do my
Okay,
cleaning.
thank you, Parker. Let me show
But
the let me
I
show
wound
the
up going to the one just south of 285 where they didn't have their surveillance set up, where they couldn't monitor what was happening before or after they arrived. Um, and that was planned to work out the way that it did, but they was going to kill this account manager. He had three boys in high school. Um, you know, me he was making an honest living, go to work every day to feed his sons and all that. And they were about to execute this gentleman. They
oh, boy.
determined it was time. It was time for an execution. So they're about to kill, this black gentleman because of his skin color. Eric
Wow.
Rudolph and Matt McRae. And of course, Mike Cook was sitting out in his Z71 while his youngest brother, Fred Cook, was in there watching the assistant manager and the manager. Manager was supposedly doing his updates with the corporate headquarters when he was actually communicating with the FBI. Um, but they were going to kill one of those employees, and I said, what's the point in doing execution? Well, to teach them that we mean business. I said, who? The police. And I said, man, I've looked out that window and I've not seen a police car out there yet. Well, of course not. They had Buford Highway blocked off a mile north of 285 and 2 miles south of 285. So no, we didn't even see any cars passing by on Buford Highway, of course, but no, there was no police vehicles around that shopping center whatsoever. Now I knew the FBI and the police was all over the place, but I wasn't about to agree with them. I disputed them. I said, well, shoot, if police are out there, how come I don't see them? Oh, you don't think police are out there? I said, I've not seen the one yet. During my two smoke breaks, the officer of the DeKalb County Police Department came out of the doors behind me on one of the businesses next door. He told me give away everything in that store, get that truck bomb out of there. Then I went out for my second smoke break, that's when the federal agent told me give everything every rent-a-center in Atlanta had to get that truck bomb out of Doryville. So we wound up giving them a Black Ashley bedroom group. But what happened was, before they arrived, I told the account manager and assistant manager to rearrange the entire showroom floor. I told that assistant manager, I said, you stay the closest to the front doors that you can get to. There's going to come a time that they're going to want to execute somebody. And I don't need you trying to get out that front door and getting killed, because you're not going to do us any good, Dad, trying to get out that front door. I said, when the moment comes, you better get out that door. I'm going to be killed.
Hold on a minute. Evil Charles? Why are you calling yourself Evil Charles? Hello there.
So anyway, so they decide they're going to kill this account manager. And I was like, well, what do y'all want to kill him for? Well, we want to send a loud message. To who? Oh, to the feds. Oh, to the feds. Okay. I said, well, why don't you just kill me instead? And of course, out comes the N word. Oh, you mean you would give
Okay.
your life, this, And I was like, and I was like, well, no, I don't look at him like this. I said, he's, well, what do you look at? I said, well, just good old black guy. He's married. He's got 3 boys in high school. He's got a wonderful wife, he goes to work every day, makes an honest living. Oh, you call the rent to own an honest living? I was like, well, yeah. I said, it's the name of the game is buy low and sell high. I said, that's free enterprises. If you can go out here and buy something and you can get 3 times what it's worth, that's free enterprise. I said, you don't have to worry about him driving up there to Murphy trying to blow up your high school nor your courthouse. So to me, he's a pretty good old boy. And of course, they asked me what I thought of them, and I pretty much called them the same thing they did the black guy. Sorry, white trash. And then whenever they asked me, well, would you be willing to give your life up for you doggone slime ball pieces? Well, Fred Cook got mad. He comes walking over toward me with his hand behind his back. I guess he's about to pull out his revolver and shoot me. And that gave the assistant manager, the moment that we had been waiting on to get out that front door. So, of course, while Fred's cussing at me walking over, out the front door he goes. And Erica was like, Fred, that one just got out the front door. And he stopped and he turned around. Sure enough, he was gone. And I was like, well, dadgummit, Fred, you wasn't supposed to let one of them escape. He turns around, looks at me, and well, of course, next thing comes in his oldest brother, cussing up a storm, wanting to know what had just happened. And I just looked at him. I was like, Mike, it's all my fault, man. Don't get mad at your little brother. You know, Fred here, he loves you, you know, um, like a brother. He'd do anything in the world, anything but to accept, upset you. And if you know anything about, my older brother and what a bully is, you would lighten up on your little brother here. And Fred is just looking at me like I'm off my rocker. You can't believe I'm sitting there defending him against his older brother who is mad because he let one of the managers out of the store. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
we know for a fact that other guy is going to go call the police now. Now, it's about a mile up the road before he can get to a payphone, but it won't take them long to walk that far. So why don't we do this? I said, one of these big screens are too big and heavy and bulky. You probably can't fit it on the back of your truck. So one of these entertainment centers is probably going to be too big. But what about one of these bedroom groups? Because they had a whole line of Ashley bedroom groups there on display. And the hottest ones at that time that was selling was the white and gold and the black and gold ones. And I just told Eric, I was like, man, I hollered at the manager. I was like, hey, man, you two want to chip in with me on a bedroom group to get them out of here? And they were like, yeah, Charles, we'll chip in on you. And I was like, well, how much are these bedroom groups over there? And they're like, I think the lowest one was like $600 or $800 cash, and the most expensive was like $1,800. And I was like, yeah, just do us a favor. Don't go out here and pick out the most expensive one and, gank us in the pocketbook, but just kind of pick you out one here, Eric, the mid range. One of the hottest sellers is this black and gold Ashley right here. I mean, they can't even, I'm surprised they even have one here that's in stock. So if I was going to pick this one, this is the one I would pick. And so he sits there and he talks with the other three, and they're like, yeah, that's the one. So of course, we start getting loaded up. And of course, when the male and female federal agents arrived in their little cutlass, pulling up like they were customers, they almost got us all killed because that woman federal agent, she looked like Maxine Waters and even talked like her. But we got out there and we got it loaded on the back of the truck, and she hollered out, "What's those in those? Um, what's that in those plastic barrels?" And Mike goes, "Oh, it's a truck bomb." So I start laughing like that's the funniest thing I had ever heard in my life. Pat him on the back, laughing like it was funny. Oh, it's all no, ma'am. They're in the chemical business up there in North Carolina. They just come by here to pick up some furniture on the way back up to Murphy. And next thing I know, they're all just crowding um, around that Oldsmobile, looking for some type of proof that this couple were FBI. And if you ever want to spot an FBI agent, they'll have an older vehicle and the son of a gun will look like it rolled out of the showroom floor. And so with a clean interior, it was a red flag, but they didn't have their federal badges on them. They had their driving license. And I finally hollered out of us, "Man, why don't y'all leave the poor couple alone, man? How are they going to be able to convince you that they are FBI if they're not, when I'm not FBI and I can't convince you boys yet that I'm not?" And they all just looked at me real funny. I said, "Get your butts over here and get in here and get that truck bomb out of here before the police get here." And of course, McRae and Ralph, "Well, we better not find out they're federal agents or you're dead." Well, of course they were federal agents. there wouldn't have been any way for them to get there if they had been. And so, yeah, of course, there was more confrontations about that, and wound up having to hurt some more of their people.
Hey, we're discussing. They said, "Why are they always trying to kill you, Charles?" Um,
Well, in 1972, my dad was the largest developer builder in East Cobb County and Southern Cherokee County. George Bentley Sr. was also a developer and builder. And so they wanted to set my daddy up for production of child pornographic material. And so they targeted the youngest child, who was me. They wound up getting George's son-in-law, Jim Stubbs, employed by my dad as a heavy equipment operator, who was supposedly already approved to go to work for the police department there in Cobb County. So, after so long of working for my dad, he was able to groom me and convince my dad and my mother into let me stay the night with him over there at Bentley Farm one night. Um, and of course, I wasn't supposed to bathe with either of the children, the two brothers, nor the daughter, who was only 8.5 months younger than me. But I was put in a tub with her for teach me some things that little 5-year-old girls shouldn't be teaching 6-year-old little boys. And they got me over there again in the spring of 1973 after I was 7 years old. And George Bentley's son goes by Ed Bentley. He's really George Edward Bentley Jr.
yeah, he's the one
But
that
Ed,
did the cards, right?
yeah, the three of them was trying to get me to have sexual intimacy with Jim's, 6-year-old daughter that day in '73.
So they can
And I just wouldn't
blackmail
do it because
your daddy, right?
they wanted to film and videotape it. And I wasn't going to do anything where people could take pictures of me or videos or, film me doing anything. Um, and luckily I got out of there alive.
Praise God.
So the brother that I entrusted to tell my secret to was my older brother, Fred, who, of course,
Yeah.
wound up telling our mother. Of course, wound up telling my dad. It did not lead to the arrest of all three. It just led to the arrest of Jim Stubbs, Ed Bentley's brother-in-law.
Right.
And of course, before he was taken into custody, he vowed to kill me the moment the doors swung open to the prison or jail doors. That my dad might could protect my other siblings, but he would never be able to stop him from getting to me. So that's how I got dragged into this mess, was really at 6 and 7 years of age, as crazy as it may sound. Um, my dad had to purchase 2 cattle ranches up in Fannin County, Georgia, is how we got moved up there in 1973. And after my dad appeared before the grand jury in 1976, there in Blue Ridge, Georgia, to get cleared up of E&O criminal wrongdoing, we moved back to Marietta, Georgia in 1976. Um, so that's how it all began on my end.
What
Uh,
part of 76 was it? How old were you in 76 at this time?
in '76, I was 10 years old. Um,
Okay.
or actually, yeah, going on 11 years old in '76. Because I was born in November of 1965. But these are the same people that John Ramsey was tied in with. Um, as far as the Atlanta child murders, the child sex trafficking in Atlanta. These are the same people that John Ramsey retired, and they're the same people responsible for all the terrorism and child sex trafficking um, that goes in the country. I'm not going to say they're in control of all of it, but they've been in control of it for well over 70 years. So that's how I got dragged into this mess. Any
Yeah, they
other
dragged
questions?
you into, and the next time you heard something about it, then your brother was involved in it, and then also at 17, where your brother said, "I want to introduce you to one of the people with the Atlanta child murders."
Well, yeah,
Uh,
that was in 1983. I became a homicide witness against Mike McLaughlin's Sheriff Bill Hudson in 1980 when I was in the eighth grade at Mabry Middle School. And I was on the back of the school bus. Um, and I saw two automobiles racing out Ebenezer Road around the curve. One later discovered was driven by Mike McLaughlin.
and
I
at the
did
time
not
he
know.
was, and at the time he was not in Atlanta, Georgia. He was in
It was
uh,
still law school living in Knoxville, Tennessee, where he's
right.
from. The same automobile he
Okay,
was driving that day was the same automobile he tried. Um,
couldn't have been.
yeah, he crashed into Grady and Willadine Raws's brick mailbox down there in Evergreen, Alabama, back in 1995 before the attack of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building. It was a 1970 Buick Centurion. He had me outmatched speed because he had a 455 four barrel dual exhaust. I had an 83 Pontiac Grand Prix SJ white with T tops with a 305. But Brooklyn Paul Road down in Conecuh County, Alabama is a very tricky road. And back then the Rawlses had their brick mailbox right at by the road before it curves to the left. And of course their picket fence for their pasture goes straight like the road would go straight, but it actually curves. So anybody that gets close proximity, closely behind another vehicle can't see where the road goes in front of them. Only the front automobile can tell that. So that's how he totaled out his Buick that became a witness against him in 1980 that he was driving when he was in progress of committing that homicide, which was also for the Bentley family. But the night that I met John, or the evening that I met John Ramsey, I actually got to meet Mike McLaughlin again. I met John there at Leighton Graphics, and Mike McLaughlin had just started his job with the Magistrate Court of Cobb County in pretrial detention and release.
Uh-huh.
When he brought Frank Floyd over there to drop him off, who was going by Bill Ramsey. I told you about that. It's in the interviews um, that we discussed before. Um, but I got to hear John admit to shooting 12-year-old Jill Robinson in the face. Um, and after that, I also got to hear him talk about how he got his butt whooped by the 11-year-old blonde up there in West Virginia the
And I think
previous
it's pretty
year.
bad also too, where they were standing there laughing about him shooting when John Ramsey was talking about shooting Joe Robinson in the face, and he was laughing about it. Man, how sick and sadistic is that?
Well,
That's
I
for the
mean,
Oakland child murders.
well, I didn't know. I didn't know he was affiliated with Lockheed Martin, other than developing the microchip and microfilm computer hardware for Lockheed Martin. I didn't know he was a, other than that, I didn't know he was an employee of Lockheed Martin, but he was vice president. And,
Right.
um,
And
but that is how I met John Ramsey just days before my 18th birthday. Was they intended to get rid of me before my 18th birthday. I found out in 1991 out of John's oldest daughter, Beth, that they had offered my brother Fred the $450,000 I was supposed to receive by July the 1st in 1996 with 6 acres and a house there at Bentley Farm. That they had offered my brother the 450,000 to whack me to where they wouldn't have to give up the 6 acres nor house on that farm. So after I pulled my little stunt there on June 19th of 1982, when they was down there doing some things to two more black boys, I wasn't able to see how old they were because it was dark. But they were still engaging in murdering black children down at the Chattahoochee way after the arrest of Wayne Williams, because Williams was arrested in 1981. And,
if we want to elaborate a little bit more on that at the end of the Chattahoochee River, what you had witnessed right there at Chattahoochee River, and some of the people that was around that. And then it's been over 2 hours. When we could go leave it off at that, and the next time take on to where um, we left off.
mhm. One more time.
And will you go ahead and talk about who all you seen there down there at the Chattahoochee? People need to know about who these bad, evil people were, um, and what they were basically doing, and then we can leave off of there because it's been over 2 hours. Like you wanted to just do it two
Yeah,
hours,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
been 2 hours and 2 minutes. And I said we could take off, and after you talk about that part, then we could go ahead and leave off. And I think the different people would like you to start off maybe the next time and start talking about when you actually met Beth Ramsey the next
Well,
time.
yeah. The Now we're getting into another 30 minutes. What I'll do, we will keep this for the next time, because the next program I want to do with you is over former Sheriff Bill Hudson,
Okay.
the Bentleys. I hate to do everybody like this because I'm brushed for time today. I got a lot of things I have to do. So let's shoot for next weekend where I can answer anybody's questions. Let's give everybody a chance to think this week about what questions they would like to ask me next weekend. And we will cover all that when we cover Bill Hudson, the Bentleys, and cover all this in that next week. That's why I told you I would like to do one on Sheriff Bill Hudson.
Okay. Do you want to make it for another 2 hours next time? And y'all, if y'all
We'll
want
we'll
to,
we'll do it for another 2 hours. That way, everybody here, the guests, can think of the questions that they would like to ask.
we'll do it again at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, and hope that y'all could come in and you could join us and think of the questions, because this is really going to be good. It's going to be some prominent names that y'all have heard of, and y'all do need to know because he
Mhm,
is a witness to all this. Okay.
mhm.
I want to thank you
And
so much for coming in.
yeah, instead of
Bill.
Saturday, I would like to shoot for Sunday, because Saturday is really the only day of the week that I have to kick back, and I really don't like to think about this stuff 7 days a week. I like to have that
Exactly.
break just to think about a lot of other stuff besides this. But I just want to
Yes.
tell everybody, just to get your to let y'all know that Ted Turner was Jane Fonda's two-time husband. We know how she earned her nickname, Hanaway Jane. Well, Tiptoe Ted Turner didn't earn his nickname from the song Tiptoeing Through the Tulips by Tiny Tim, that's for sure. So if this helps everybody understand that Ted Turner and a lot of these boys of what we call from the Billionaires Club are in fact involved in the Atlanta child murders.
Yes.
And like to reemphasize again, all names mentioned, these are accusations. All parties mentioned are innocent until proven guilty in the court of law.
And you're saying it to the best of what you had witnessed.
Yes, ma'am. I don't find any pleasure at all in having to discuss this stuff.
Ted
Um,
Turner is from Turner's Broadcasting Network, ain't it right? Ted Turner?
yes, ma'am. Turner Broadcasting. He started CNN, cable news network,
Right.
called Chomo News Network. Um,
Yes.
there was a lot of wealthy people involved in this, and the terrorism in the United States did not start with the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building.
Notice that.
In my book, the first
Thank
attack,
you.
the first attack against the United States by Israel was the
Uh-huh.
1967 attempted sinking of the USS Liberty during the Six Day War.
Wow. Well, I
So
appreciate
Israel is not our ally. They never have been our ally, and they never will be anyone's ally.
it's because of the Jesuits, right? Not the wait a
Well,
minute.
the Mossad,
The
the very
Mossad, yes,
same
Mossad,
people
sorry.
involved in this, Israeli intelligence, um, and a lot of people are waking up to it. And you know, I'm not out here condemning the Jewish people.
Right.
I'm out here condemning the Zionist state of Israel and their child sex trafficking operations in the world, including in the United States. I am full support of the Palestinian state. I am full support of Messianic Judaism. That's my belief. And I do not condone violence in any way, form, or manner, even though I've got a reputation by these people for being violent. But um, when I have to defend myself, I have to defend myself. So I have to become as violent as them. So,
Yeah, you're just gonna stand right there and let them go ahead and kill you. Fine. Yeah, right. You know?
no, no, I dare them to send some more because right now I think I'm at 19 that I have put in ICUs with broken jaws and cheekbones. One succumbed. If they want to send some more, I'll just make it the point to hit them just as hard as I did that one that succumbed to his injuries. Just like I told the police that day, they thought they were going to arrest me for it. So, um,
Yes. Yes,
um,
they do. They target men and everything, and all these older these men that's missing and stuff. I can't help but wonder some of the times if they fell prey to these people. So
mhm.
you can't help
Well,
but wonder that.
they target me ever since I was 6 years old. The first attempt on my life was I was 9 years old. I don't consider the incident when I was 14 as an attempt because a staged event involving my cousin Robert Beach and Ed Bentley Jr. The third attempt on my life was just before my 18th birthday, the night I met John Ramsey, Frank Floyd, and Judge
Yeah,
McLaughlin.
that's Frank Delano Floyd. If y'all
Yeah,
want
Franklin
to look that
Delano
up.
Floyd. We're still tied in with the Bentleys.
And Frank
Um,
Delano Floyd was also known by the code name that John Ramsey called him as Bill Ramsey. Am I right?
yeah, he was going by Bill Ramsey the night that I met him that evening. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Charles. Evil
Yeah.
Charles. Evil Charles said that his cousin John was killed by a serial killer.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that too.
Said tried to get him too, but he threatened him.
Yeah, I mean, that's what these people don't like is somebody able to stand up to them. They're so used to people getting scared and cowering up and pleading for their safety and stuff like that. Um, I learned when dealing with these kind of people, if you don't have a weapon and they do, you have to become a weapon,
Right.
and you have to know where to hit. Because there's a woman can take out a man if she knows where to punch him right. And
Because it was 1996, they'll execute him soon. If you fight back, they get scared when I was 14. Where, do you know the murderer's name? Just curiosity. Yeah, that was 1996, he said.
yeah, I wonder what state.
I wondered
Um,
also.
well, if he thinks that there's any type of connection,
There,
um,
Daniel Owen Conahan Jr.,
name doesn't ring a bell, but
the hog trail killer out of Florida.
okay, okay. Well, to me, serial killers, a lot of them are trained to be serial killers. They're recruited in by other serial killers. Um, don't get me wrong, you will have some lone wolves out there that operate alone, but I still think they come from the same social club. Um, Rex Harriman, he's around 6'3", 6'4", the same size as Danny Hughes,
Oh,
and
is it sexual sadistic nurse?
I don't find that surprising at all.
It does.
Um,
It does sound pretty much like because it's people that's high in society and people trusted and education, and usually other kind of serial killers that's not in with a clique. A lot of times, it's
yeah.
lone
Well,
wolf.
even Charles, if you think you have some information that may tie it into these other people, just feel free to reach out on me on Messenger, or you can send Miss Clark a message one. And because I when I round these people up, I hope to round up every doggone serial killer, child rapist in the country.
Or
Uh,
or you could give them your email address.
yes, and also anyone that wants to reach out to me, they can send me emails through Blackstone Lawyer, which is one word, followed with a period. PROV, which is short for provisional. GOV, which is short for governor. NC, which is abbreviation for North Carolina at outlook.com. So that is Blackstone Lawyer dot PROVGOVNC at outlook.com.
And he is a provisional governor in North Carolina, by the way.
Well, appointed governor of the provisional state of North Carolina, but it still revert to the same as provision. I'm still the appointed governor of the state of North Carolina.
It says I live 39 minutes from Terry Nichols' home where he lived with his brother. I really believe people for John Ramsey go after their own because they rip out the heart of the mother. Not just after their own. He lived in different locations. I mean, because he was affiliated with the Oakland child murders. He was affiliated with the um, Atlanta child murders. So he's not just going after his own. He's affiliated with the murder also of Levi Brady, all them people, they're all in this whole clique thing together. He's even affiliated with Epstein, okay?
Well, I believe it's the same bunch that's tied in to the Delphi homicides of um, um, Libby German and Abigail Williams.
Yeah, and if
Um,
there's some of the things that did not pan out with that Wayne Williams. I think you said because the prefix showed, did it not, that it was really carpeted from a car instead of carpeted from inside of a house. And Wayne Williams, the carpeting was inside his house, which really didn't fit in with the carpeting of inside of a car, though.
well, I'm not going to mention any names, but I spoke with Wayne Williams, let's see, in 2020 by telephone with this person. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Right.
And I also met with Eddie Rogers back in 1997. Now, Eddie swears up and down that Wayne approached him one night going to abduct him. One of my buddies, the Easy Rental, who helped me stop a lot of the terrorist attacks there in the 90s, when I told him these same people had taken credit for the Atlanta child murders, he set up a meeting with Eddie and I. And um, and Evil Charles, I heard that before. I also heard that the same bunch that was, involved in the Son of Sam murders were also involved in the Zodiac, and we're still talking about some of the same bunch. Um, but
Yeah.
Wayne was only convicted of murdering two adults, and you're only talking a guy that's only about 5'4". Those would be some pretty heavy boys for him to throw over the bridge there into the Chattahoochee River. And um, if he was abducting children, he was a procurer. He wasn't the one who actually carried through with the murders. If he did not act alone.
It was weird what's happened at the bottom over there on the Chattahoochee where they were raping these young boys and stuff. There were Ted Turner and all them were.
Yeah, I could see all the faces out there. It was dark, but I know I saw Ted out there. I saw Ron Brill out there. I wasn't able to see my cousin Robert, but I was able to talk to him. And of course, I saw Fred Bentley Jr. walking along the river bank up toward West Paces Ferry to see if there was a group of people up there waiting on me or not. And there wasn't. There was just my buddy Ronnie waiting on me. And so that really impressed them. I couldn't count. I know I could see a lot of figures out there. There had to be at least 40 to 50 people out there that night. And of course, later I come to find out a lot of them's names that were down there that night. And among those names, Larry Fink, Arthur Blank, Ron Brill, Bernie Marcus, Jeff Epstein. That's not counting Ted Turner, Frank Floyd, John Ramsey, Sheriff Bill Hudson. I don't know how many law enforcement were down there that night, but there was law enforcement involved. So I hope that answers enough questions to where some people have some really good questions. I like the questions that I'm seeing here because um, um, I've heard the same thing about Pizzagate. I've heard the same thing about John Podesta. Um, I don't know how to respond to that. What I do know what to respond to is the stuff that I do have the knowledge of, what I have seen, what I have experienced, and who I know are involved in this. Um, so and next Sunday, hopefully, we'll have some really great questions, some really great guests.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, I can answer some more questions.
So
Um,
be sure y'all show
once
up.
once the state starts moving on it, I'm probably going to have to hold back on the interviews for a while. Maybe pop one out here and there, but state of North Carolina should be moving here pretty soon. So hopefully next weekend we can get the other stuff carried about John Ramsey, Bill Hudson, Milton Frady, and all that out for everybody. So everybody have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for the wonderful interview, Miss Clark. I'm sorry the first one we did on these two individuals wasn't high enough quality, but hopefully this answers everyone's questions.
I think this is really good, high quality. It's a good thing that we redid this again because we got some awesome people coming in here responding. I think it's amazing when they come in here and they ask questions and want to know more because it's going to, the thing is, when people compare the notes on what they hear and what they get, it helps build up and more knowledge for everyone as well. I want to thank everybody for coming in, and I hope to see y'all next Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you so much, Charles, and thank you, Evil Charles, and everyone that are here.
All right, thank you, and shalom Shabbat.
Shalom. Good night, everybody.